He then gets back on his microphone in the car and his radio and says, that thing's just passed over me. And he's done that within about 45 seconds of seeing this thing. And the operator says, where have you been? We've been trying to contact you for over half an hour. Now, since then, he's had an MRI. He had a bad back and some headaches, so he had an MRI. And it's located an object behind his right eye, which he believes has been implanted there. And they have what they call a Mexican standoff, where they start circling this object in the sky like a gunslinger would his opponent before they're about to draw. And as they get to the one side of it, they stop and they're filming it, and they're looking through the FLIR, the forward-looking infrared, and the back of the craft gets hot, lifts up a little bit, then it shoots forward about 50-60 metres in the sky. And I can only relate to you what PC Hammond said to me, and he said this. He said it was like a hole in the sky opened up, and this thing flew into it, and then the sky zipped back up once it had gone through.
Hello and welcome to Aliens Explored, your weekly look at the mysterious skies. Today we're joined by Inspector Roy Teague, author of Close Encounters of the Police Kind, incredible true stories of UFO sightings by British police officers. The book brings together accounts from UK police officers who say they have witnessed UFOs, UAPs and other unexplained events, including cases involving missing time and alleged abduction experiences. What makes this especially interesting is the witness group. Police officers are trained to observe, record, assess and give evidence. But what happens when those same professional witnesses report something that seems to sit outside normal explanation? Roy, welcome to Aliens Explored. Please start by giving everyone a bit of background about yourself and your career.
Yes, certainly. Thanks for having me on the show. Really great to be here. First of all, despite what the internet says, I'm still a serving police officer. I've not retired. A lot of sites say that I have. I hold the rank of inspector, and I've done so for about 8 years. And to explain the rank structure, it's PC, then sergeant, then inspector. I have been in the police for a total combined level of service of nearly 27 years. I did 4.5 years in Surrey. I've done more than 22 in the West Midlands. I've worked predominantly on proactive teams, 909 response, the firearms operations unit. I led operations on the ground from an armed capacity. I authorised the deployment of armed officers, think for spontaneous deployments like bank robbery in progress, or as a man in the street with a gun. I dealt with planned operations where it's, John Smith's going to shoot dead Fred Bloggs, involving sort of surveillance assets and plainclothes officers. So I've got a good rounded amount of experience in the police. And the three things are important to me: protecting the public, locking up proper criminals, and I don't mean people who just don't wear the seatbelts. I mean proper criminals, burglars and robbers. And one of the most important things to me is looking after the officers that I've got the high honour of leading. That's my policing footprint and my ethos in a nutshell. Simple.
Brilliant.
Right.
Thank you for that. So fair to say then you've had very, very responsible and positions within the police.
Yeah, I mean, I got promoted after 4.5 years. When I transferred from Surrey to West Mid, I became a sergeant. I was on for 14 years. So that's my first supervisory level there. I think probably the sergeant's the most important rank, because you've got what the inspector tells the officers they're going to do. And then when the inspector's not there, they might not do it. The sergeant really sort of steers the teams. But you get more of an overview, and it's more strategic when you become an inspector. But both ranks are very important. But yeah, I've got a good level of supervisory experience in 2 Home Office police forces. So only another 3 years to go, unless I retire earlier.
Fantastic. So, but it's not really your career you're here to talk about. We're here to talk about your new book, Close Encounters of the Police Kind, which released just very recently on World UFO Day on the 2nd of July, 2nd of July. What made you think, this needs to be a book when you're looking at this information?
Because no one had ever done that type of UFO book before. So there are plenty of UFO books out there you can read about. There's plenty of police UFO books, but no one has ever published a UK police anthology of solely police encounters, UK police encounters involving British police officers. No one's done that before. I wanted to be the first, and the only reason the officers, in my opinion, spoke up was because one of their own was asking the question. So I did a series of appeals. The appeals lasted, it was on and off for about 3 or 4 years, and as a result of the appeals on the radio and in the press, various social media platforms, I interviewed and spoke to over 250 police officers who told me about their UFO accounts, and I took the best 75 most intriguing of those accounts and then put them in a book in date chronological order in the book. And I thought it was very important to do so because I want people to know this phenomena is real, and it isn't just Joe the plumber or Fred the baker that is seeing these things. You've got, former and currently serving police officers that have seen these things too. They're real, and I think the subject should be treated with the respect and the credibility that it doesn't get. And I want the stories out in the public eye. That's my goal, and that's why I did it.
So, did you already, kind of a chicken and egg question this, but did you already have an interest in UFOs and then spoke to police witnesses, or was it the police witness accounts that kind of drew you into ufology?
No, the definite answer for this one, I've always been interested in the paranormal and UFOs, things that go bump in the night, the unexplained. Always had an interest in it, but it took off predominantly when I got back from a late shift. I think it was 2016, and I caught a documentary called UFOs and Nukes, where, and I'm sure that you've probably read about it and seen it, but UFOs were seen above American military bases that rendered the nuclear missiles contained within them inoperable. And that's quite a huge thing when something renders a whole base worth of ICBMs inoperable, that's intercontinental ballistic missiles inoperable. That's huge. And I thought, well, why would these military personnel make that up? So then I started thinking how reliable and credible the witnesses were. Then I thought, well, who else makes good witnesses? Hey, the police, because of the credibility. They're trained observers by nature of the profession that they're in. That is how, so I've always had an interest in it, but that documentary and then looking into the police UFO incidents and then appealing for my own witnesses, because I didn't want rehashed stuff. I wanted new, never before told testimonies, and that is exactly what I got. So the first dated sighting I got starts in 1966, and the last one I got was 2026 this year, 250 of those in that period of time. So I've always had it in the back of my mind. Always been a fan.
And as you say, some of these go back quite a long way, and in many cases police officers kept quiet about what they'd seen for fear of reputational damage to themselves. Do you think their recollection might have been slightly degraded by time, if they're talking about something that happened 50 odd years ago?
That is the case, yes, if they were only talking about it for the first time in 50 years. But if you have spoken about it a few times since to close friends and family, that makes although it's 50 years in the past, if you've spoken, so, if you and Neil are chatting about something today and you chat about it again next week, and then 6 months later and a year later, it'll be kind of fresh in your mind because you've spoken about it several times to each other. But I have had witnesses, as you quite rightly allude to, that haven't spoken about it for maybe 40 years, 50 years. So then it will have degraded, because that's only natural. But if something, as fundamental and as life-changing as seeing a UFO craft that you believe has been built from non-human hands is seen 50 years ago, that memory is not going to fade. So it could do if you never spoke about it. But I think I'm more than happy with the testimony from the officers that I've got, no matter how old the sighting is.
When you spoke to the officers about these, then I mean, their memory of it might still be very fresh. But do you think, as officers, they're more likely to go straight to, I saw something I couldn't identify, or like, because they're still human, many of us would go, oh my God, it was aliens, it was a flying saucer or whatever. Was there, do you think, a difference in the way these officers thought about their experience?
I think that depends on the individual themselves. Because if I saw something, and I've never had a UFO sighting, but if I saw something and I was on the fence whether it was something alien or something man-made, I'd probably be looking to try and the police officers look to try and prove what the most likely reason is. So there's a thing called Occam's razor, where the simplest solution tends to be the correct one. So if a police officer was to see a strange light near an airport, he'd probably be thinking, well, that's probably an airplane. If he saw a light near a meteor shower, he'd probably thinking it's a meteor. So we always look for the sensible solutions. But it doesn't matter whether you're a police officer or not. I think if you believe in UFOs and you think there is something else out there, then you're more open-minded to be swayed to that answer if you do have a sighting. Whereas if you don't, you might be trying to look for the rational explanation, even if there isn't one. Because we've all got that unconscious bias, haven't we, where we try and prove what we believe, and we've always believed. But police officers are human. But no matter what, even if I would suggest a police officer thought they'd seen an unidentified flying object, and when I say unidentified flying object, I mean, that doesn't mean alien craft, it just means it's an unidentified flying object. For the purposes of this interview, when we say UFO, I know what you mean non-human tech and alien spacecraft. I think, whether you believe it or not, if you're in the police, there is this unwritten stigma that you don't publicly talk about it because of the reputation the negative reputation it might bring to you, and the negative impact it might have on your career. So I'm amazed that these officers came forward, but they did.
Do you know of any officers who did talk about what they'd seen and did face negative consequences? Did you come across any of those?
I mean, I personally, just for investigating them, have had some negative, shall I say, experiences within the police. And because I'm still serving, I can't go into. But as soon as I started to investigate this, because I'd heard about people like Alan Godfrey, he went on to TVAM to speak about his very famous sighting in 1980. He was ridiculed for it, and ultimately he ended up retiring early from the service, and he put that down to the pressure he got from senior officers about talking about what he had seen in Todmorden all those years, years ago. But I remember reading about a guy. So El Paso Deputy Sheriff Chuck Sikowski, and now he believed his police training and his investigative skills, examining, being interested in UFOs and paranormal. He believed that gave him, a better ability and having an open mind to investigate matters of the paranormal and all the rest of it. So there was an El Paso County investigation, and it attributed a series of cattle mutilations to predators, and he publicly challenged that online on his own website, saying he believed the cattle mutilations might have a link to ufology. Now, shortly after that, on February the 9th, 2011, two Colorado deputy sheriffs turned up at his doorstep. They relieved him of his gun and his badge, and they told him he'd been fired for contradicting and being critical of an official sheriff's office investigation in a public forum. So it does happen, it has happened, and it may continue to happen. Now, that is at the forefront of my mind. However, we, the police, in the British police, are told from day one, you are seekers of the truth. This is happening. It's happened not all over just the UK, but all over the world. We're seekers of the truth. It's happening. Let's talk about it. Let's not hide away from it. And let's not persecute people that do, no matter what their occupation is. But it is at the forefront of my mind. I have suffered from it in regards to people in the police take me now a little less seriously than what they did probably even 2 or 3 months ago because of my interest and I think that is a real shame, personally.
It is,
but it's just the way it is. But I'm going to keep going because you want to get to the bottom of things.
It's not just colleagues in the canteen jeering about little green men and flying saucers. It's actually coming from senior ranking officers who are telling you to stop talking about this stuff.
I can neither confirm or deny that.
Okay.
It's a good phrase, that one. We hear that one a lot in ufology these days. So do you think police witnesses then would be more willing or more ready to come forward if there was some kind of serious way of reporting this phenomenon? Maybe not even necessarily within the police force itself, but a formal, wide-ranging official channel to report these things. Do you think that would allow people to come forward a bit more, especially police officers?
I think it would. But no, there used to be several police forces that they would have a procedure. If a member of the public or if they saw a UFO, there was a procedure, and it would go in the daily occurrence book, and then you would have to ring up the Royal Air Force, and they would probably send you a questionnaire. You would fill it in. All of that's gone now. I mean, if somebody rings up and reports a UFO now, we, the police, would just say, well, that's not a policing matter. And we would just probably close the log and it'd be no further police action because, it's not a crime, all the rest of it. Now, I got told once by, a senior officer to pick another subject. I think that was the word he used, pick another subject. Well, and he said it wasn't a police matter, but if you bear with me, I threw at him the following: kidnapping and abduction. And it's the unlawful taking and carrying away of a person against their will, often by force or fraud without the consent. I then threw in false imprisonment, the unlawful and intentional or reckless restraint of a person's freedom of movement against their will without legal justification. Kidnapping, abduction and false imprisonment are crimes, but when we get those crimes, we'll investigate them. But as soon as somebody mentions there's a UFO involvement, we don't, do we? We'll just say it's mental health or it's clearly not that because they don't exist, and we won't investigate them. So we, the police, take no part in UFO reports whatsoever, and because we don't, officers don't come forward. So in a very long way, I've said that, yes, we would get more officers come forward if there was a proper set of procedures to record them in the police, but there isn't, so we don't.
Okay, because
I got to say, sorry, Neil. I am absolutely horrified to hear. So one of my side gigs is I'm a professional drone operator, and UFOs doesn't necessarily mean spacecraft. It means something in the sky that you can't readily identify.
Correct.
Now, I could go out with my UAV, with my drone, and fly it illegally and use it for illegal purposes. If somebody sees it, doesn't recognise it as a drone, but sees it's doing something it shouldn't be doing, that is surely a police matter. But you're saying that would be no, because it's unidentified.
I suppose it would depend on what the verbals were spoken to the police operator. So if somebody rings up and says, I've seen a UFO and it's like a craft of some kind of space, it depends how big. Like a drone, you're going to be talking like, the biggest drones, I mean, you probably know more about drone sort of regulations than I, but you don't get much drones much bigger than, big. So yeah. I think if somebody, we might investigate that. It would depend where it is, locations, everything. If it was near the airport, we're going to go and have a look, aren't we? If it was flying over probably schools for safety reasons, we'd go there. What's all that about? It would depend, I suppose, where the location is. And then a lot of it is going to be determined by how the craft is described. If someone says, "Oh, look, there's a triangular, UFO that built by aliens over a field at such and such," they might just close that log off. If it was like there's a suspicious drone flying over a school, we might check that out for public safety reasons. Because, but if there's an alien connotation, we might not look into it.
Right, okay, interesting. Because the person reporting it may be mistaken in the way they report it. That's my kind of thinking.
I think sometimes whether it's investigated depends on what day of the week it is, who's the operator, and how busy we are. I'm going to be honest with you. So we've only got a certain amount of resources, and you can never say how busy you're going to be, that morning or afternoon or evening. If the world is on fire at 7 o'clock and you've got 15 outstanding 999 calls that are grades of immediates going to and from, and then somebody rings in and goes, oh, there's a suspicious drone above such and such, we're probably not going to get there. If there's nothing going on and somebody rings up and says there's a suspicious drone over wherever, we'll probably go then, but it all depends on how the land lies at the time, and what the resourcing issue is, and the demand.
Fair enough. Thank you for clarifying that a bit better, because it sounded pretty bad at first.
Yeah. I mean, as your cases are in chronological order, in some of the earlier instances, there seem to be cases where someone from the public would ring up and say, oh, there's a UFO, there's a blinding light over the road at such and such a place. And they would send out an officer to investigate. And that officer would obviously have to report back something, wouldn't they? And also corroborate that with anything else that might have...
Like I say, it depends on the report. If it's a blinding light over a road, you might think, well, for public reasons, we might be blinding of a motorist driving down the road and that could cause a crash. So we might send somebody to that. I'm just saying, if it was over woodland or fields, and we might not to that one. It all depends on the information, the intelligence, the call that comes in, and the resources at the time. So we wouldn't not send somebody all the time, but we wouldn't send somebody all the time either. It all depends.
Okay, so do you think some of the earlier cases in your book are the better ones, where police officers were actually sent to deal with it?
Some of them, it depends which one you're talking about, because there's so many. But I mean, there's probably 4 or 5. I mean, they're all good, but there's probably 4 or 5 that stick out. I mean, the first one in the book, for example, 1966, you got PC Stenner, and he's driving down a road towards Lawsgate Airport, which is now Bristol Airport, and all the traffic lights, all the lampposts go out, and then his car dies at the same time, and he comes to rest at the bottom of a hill. He has to pump the brakes on his Zephyr-free car. It was linked to the steering at the time was linked to the engine, and it had gone dead, so that he nearly crashed the car. And of course, then they've seen a UFO in the sky, and it's clearly obvious. You don't need to have the brains of a rocket scientist to work out if all the electrons have gone in your car, they've gone on all the lampposts and the houses around you, and then there's this UFO in the sky. They're probably going to be related, aren't they? So they've stared at this thing for about a minute before it's then blinked out of existence and gone. I've got a few where police cars have been knocked out. I've got another one in Arboyne up in Scotland, where an officer was told, we've had loads of calls. There's an object in the sky coming from the direction of Aberdeen towards your location. Can you see if you can see anything? And he says on the mic, yeah, I'll have a look. Looks out, doesn't see anything. It's at night, so it's dark sky. But then what happens is he describes it as a rolling power cut coming towards him and all the street lights going out. And then as the one goes out near his police car then goes dead. At that point, he looks up and sees a huge triangular craft flying over his head, and then it flies off. Then the lights come back on, but he knows what the craft is, even though he can't see it, because he can see the lights going up off miles away as it moves across the towns and stuff. Now, he then gets back on his microphone in the car and his radio and says, that thing's just passed over me. And he's done that within about 45 seconds of seeing this thing. And the operator says, where have you been? We've been trying to contact you for over half an hour. Now, since then, he's had an MRI. He had a bad back and some headaches, so he had an MRI. And it's located an object behind his right eye, which he believes has been implanted there. Initially, he thought it was from a lump of coal that had hit him, and some of the coal had split off and gone behind his eye. And his sister threw that at him when they were kids. They had a coal fight, as you do, throwing lumps of coal at each other.
Of course he did.
And when he spoke to his sister about it, he said, you never guess what? When you threw that piece of coal and it hit me in the face when I was a kid and scarred me, it's a little tiny scar, there's a bit of the coal. The MRI's picked it up, and she said, we never had a coal fight. What are you talking about? And he said, well, we've spoken about it loads of times throughout our lives. And she said, we haven't. So he believes that not only has the memory of the coal fight been implanted into him, but the subsequent memories of talking about it have also been implanted into him. And he's got now memories. The more he thinks about it, he's got memories of little small individuals, I guess, around his bed from a kid all through his life up to now. And we think it's this incident in Arboyne that has set it off, and it's allowed him to remember. I mean, these are just two, like I say, of hundreds and hundreds of cases. I've got all sorts of ones with, UFOs chasing police cars down the A19, big orbs that are so hot that they're in danger of burning the occupants of the car that they've driven off. I could go on forever and not shut up, and you'd never get a word in, and I could be talking about this forever. But suffice to say, it's tons of really good UFO sightings that defy normal explanation.
Well, rather than reciting all the cases, people should buy the book and read them for themselves, right?
I agree. That's a very, very, very good idea.
If you're at all interested in this and want to be thorough about it, yeah.
Well, I suspect people are interested if they're watching this podcast, so yeah. Absolutely.
Absolutely. But what for you then, without spoiling the book, which case of, like you say, there are some really intriguing cases and some strong cases in there. Which one case would you say has sort of stayed with you the most? And it might be the same answer to this. If you were going to tell a skeptic to read the book, which case would you start them off on?
PC Hammond. So PC Hammond, 1997. It's an intriguing one because PC Hammond was on a police helicopter. That was his role. So you've got the pilot who's a civilian, and then you've got two police officers in the aircraft. Well, that night, there was a guy called Dave DeFrampton who was a warrant officer from the Adjutant General's Corps, and he was involved in intelligence, and there was a joint police partnership thing going on at the time, whatever they were doing. So Dave Frampton went up in the helicopter with PC Hammond and the pilot, and they are, it's 97. I have got the exact date, but not written down. But the reason they're up there is because there were loads of people in the street. There's like a march, a demo. So for that reason, because of the footfall and for safety reasons, in case there was any public disorder, the helicopter's up. And people start shooting fireworks up. Not at the helicopter, but just shooting up in there. So the helicopter banks over to the left. And as it banks over to the left, they see a craft in the sky, but it's only about 100 metres away. And he describes it as like a paper dart, but it's about like 30 or 40 metres in length. Very odd. And it shouldn't be there because it's not far from Parliament, Downing Street. Now, these areas are restricted for obvious reasons. So they get on the radio and say, what else have you got up here? Can you get hold of Heathrow, Gatwick? And they get told, there's nothing else up there, that you're on your own. They're like, well, they're looking at it. So now they get intrigued, don't they? And they have what they call a Mexican standoff, where they start circling this object in the sky like a gunslinger would his opponent before they're about to draw. And as they get to the one side of it, they stop and they're filming it, and they're looking through the FLIR, the forward-looking infrared, and the back of the craft gets hot, lifts up a little bit, then it shoots forward about 50, 60 metres in the sky. And I can only relay to you what PC Hammond said to me, and he said this. He said it was like a hole in the sky opened up, and this thing flew into it, and then the sky zipped back up once it had gone through. So then you start thinking it's interdimensional, something in 97 you wouldn't really have spoken about. We just think about someone, a UFO coming from wherever to wherever. Now, they didn't say anything about that because of the ridicule and the stigma. And in the same airspace, about 20 years before, there was a guy called PC Humphreys, right? And he, in the same airspace, I'd seen a UFO, and he'd asked the pilot to follow this UFO, and he got severely reprimanded for that, and they took away his role in the police air service unit. The RAF contacted him and said, if you tell us what you saw, we'll get you reinstated. So for some reason the RAF had an interest. So he gets interviewed, taken away, he gives the interview, and he says, well, what about my flight status? And they said, you've now been restored, it's been taken care of. And just before he leaves the RAF man's company, he says to him, can you tell me what it was that I saw? It was like a barrel-shaped UFO, the size of like a car. And the RAF guy said, all I can say to you is, we believe they were probes, because there were two of them, from a much larger craft higher up. So that's a great sight in itself. But because of the ridicule that guy had for 20 years afterwards, that's why PC Hammond didn't want to say anything, and the pilot wouldn't come forward. and the intelligence officer from the army wouldn't speak about it. And it's only in the last couple of years, after everybody's retired, that they've let me interview them, and they've provided me sketches of what they saw. So what you've got in essence is a police officer who is trained in, avionics, involved as a glider pilot as well, and an intelligence officer on a helicopter who've seen a craft of some kind, 40, 50 metres long, zip into a hole in the sky that's closed up behind them. And I think it's a very intriguing case. And they're not the only helicopter staff that I've interviewed and obtained stories from. But that's probably up there for me.
Okay, and their testimonies all lined up. They all corroborated each other. They didn't conflict at all.
Interviewed them both at length, separate. They hadn't spoke to each other for a very long time, so I managed to get both before they had the time to collude. And they're not that type of person anyway. But remember, these guys have got nothing to gain and everything to lose by coming forward.
Yeah.
And they're risking the ridicule, and I think it's commendable of them to come out and tell everybody what they've seen.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of quick questions about the case you just mentioned there. So you mentioned that they were videoing using FLIR cam.
Correct.
To record this. Is that footage available?
You know what? That's the first question, because why wouldn't you, that I asked. Now, they said it was partially captured, but back in the day there was no... it basically was video, like a VHS video. That's how basic it was back then. When they landed, they said they viewed it, but it wasn't the best. It was grainy and it showed something, but you couldn't... I don't know whether that was interference from whatever the object was, but for the sake of what they said was their mortgage and pensions and jobs, and not wanting to be ridiculed, they just left the tape in the thing and just let it record over. I know the previous guy, the guy who had the ridicule, PC Humphreys, that video was seized and it was taken out of the aircraft by the inspector, typical inspector, at the when they landed back, and that was then taken. I suspect that went to the RAF or the government, and we'll never see the light of that ever again. Ever again. But I understand why Mr. Hammond and Mr. Frampton didn't come forward.
Absolutely. But that actually leads to my other question. When you said about the second case where the guy was reinstated, had his license to fly with the police reinstated by the RAF. Do the RAF have that authority over the police?
No, so it was a request. So the RAF contacted the police and said, look, we know about this. Can we speak to your officer? And the police have then rung and said, can you? And he said, yes, I will. And he spoke to them on the phone. He said, look, I've got enough grief over this as it is. I've lost my role on the air support unit. I don't really want to get involved. And at which point they've said, if you give us a statement, we will get you back flying again. And that is why you did it. So they don't have any authority over us. But I would suggest the RAF don't have any authority over me, but if I was to see something and then, the Chief Constable, for example, went, go and speak to the RAF. That's I'm going to go and speak to the RAF because the Chief said. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I'm just thinking if you'd been sacked for it, though, and the RAF says, "Oh, we'll get you your job back," I don't see them having that kind of authority.
I think at the level of the RAF, it could have been something like a squadron leader or even higher, who probably maybe rang someone of senior authority in the police and have said, "Hey, we want to speak to your man. Can you make it happen, please?" At which point, so the order's not from the RAF. The request is from the RAF to the police, and then it'll be from a senior officer just down to the inspector or sergeant, and then you get the phone call. You're like, okay, then, but they can't give you any orders, the RAF, because although we're all servants of the Crown, it's a completely different organisation with a different sort of hierarchy.
It's important to play nicely with each other.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of like the RAF and the Navy and the Army, so I'd be happy to cooperate with them.
Yeah, I can see you've got an impressive chest full of medals behind you there. Are most of them? Is that a mix of police and army?
It's a mix. It's Northern Ireland, Bosnia, and then you got sort of the the Diamond and Golden Jubilees and Platinum and the Coronation Medal for the King, and then the long service good conduct or as I say, the long service, never been caught police medal.
Yes.
So yeah, they look pretty. It's just a bit about your history, isn't it? And it looks good, doesn't it? It looks good. So
It does look very good, yeah. Chest full of medals. When I was in the army, there actually weren't that many medals going around. You get about half the battalion would have the Northern Ireland medal. 1 or 2 might have a Cyprus UN medal, and a few of the older ones might have the LS&GC. And that was it, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, so nice going.
Coming back onto the book then, and there are cases mentioning missing time and abduction claims, which you mentioned briefly earlier. With those cases, with those witnesses and accounts, did you approach the police officers involved differently to how you would simple sightings? Because it can obviously be very delicate.
It was, funnily enough, the ones I spoke to, and don't get me wrong, out of the 75 in the book, I think there's about 4 in there. So it's not like a multitude, but 4's still a good number. It was funny, they didn't ring me and say I've had some missing time. As they were telling the story, I began to think it, and I think it was the first time they'd been able to get it off the chest. And I would say something like, is there anything else you want to tell me that you haven't said about the time that you saw this to the time you got home or the time you decided to do? And then I would I'd almost have to try and get that out of them and tease it out of them, because they almost didn't want to admit it themselves. So, pointing cases, a PC Flanagan, and he was on the A14 in Cambridge, and he's just past the sugar factory, synonymous with UFO sightings around there, but he's on the A14, and there's a big bend in a road. He's got his 2 children in the back of the car, his wife sat in the front, and even the dog's in the back, yapping away. Everyone's talking. And he sees a cigar-shaped craft half over a road, half over a cornfield, about 50 metres up in the air. So he knows he's going to pass underneath it. And as he's just underneath it, the thing just disappears out of existence. Now, we don't think it's shot off at 1,000,000 miles an hour. It didn't fade into nothing. It's just blinked out of existence. We can't explain it. And this thing was pretty large. And then within a couple of 10 or 15 seconds of that happening, nobody was talking in the car, and he looked in the backs, and his 2 kids are asleep, the dog's asleep, and his wife's asleep, and he starts to be overcome with tiredness. So he pulls into a lay-by because he thinks I'm going to crash the car. And literally, he said to me, he's closed his eyes, he assumed for 30 seconds to a minute, he's opened them, and he's carried on his journey. And when he's got home, he has checked his watch, and 2.5 hours of his life and his family's have gone missing. I did speak to him about, because we all know what we're talking about here, don't we? And I did speak to him about, some hypnotic regression, as he considered that. And he said to me, some questions are best left unanswered, and he doesn't want to do that. And I've got to respect his wishes. So like I say, I can't prove or disprove these stories. Or what I do is I listen to the witness, I write their account, I send it back to them for them to say, yes, that's correct, or tweak that. And then I investigate it as best as I can. Like I'll go back on the internet and I'll find out where Mars, Venus, or whatever was at the time, was there an air show at the time? The usual inquiries. I've got to try and rule out like 50, 60 things I've got on a list: comets, meteorites, drones, planes. You name it. I've got to rule out all of that stuff. And then I've got to try and rule out, was it a secret military craft being tested? And that's very hard to work out, because one, the government's never going to admit it. Speed alone is very difficult, because we're a clever species, and we have made craft now that can travel at Mach 20, Mach 22, which is like 21,000 miles an hour. The only way I try and rule out military craft, secret military craft, is right angle turns, crazy trajectory, what I call bullet exit, where something's still and then it's gone. There's no build up, no thrust, it's just bang, it's gone. Because despite how clever we are, we can't do that just yet. So if I can rule all of the things out on my list, meteorites, drones, flares, and the secret military craft, then maybe, just maybe, I have something. And my rationale for that is, if you find, as Sir Arthur Conan Doyle said, if A and B are impossible, then C must be the truth. So what that means is if A is impossible, all of the things like drones, flares, meteors, if that's impossible, and B is impossible, secret military craft being tested, then all that remains, C, extraterrestrial craft, must be the truth. But it takes a long time to get there, and to say it's definitely C, you've really got to rule out an abundance of objects in the sky, and it's very tough. So, you know, of the 250 I've interviewed, I am confident that probably 9 or 10 of them, and there might be more, but 9 or 10, I would nail my hat on that what they've seen is a craft built by non-human tech. So it's this many, but you can only really, you know, by process of elimination, say a very small amount. But you only need to prove one for the case to be made out, don't you, that these things exist.
Absolutely. It's interesting what you say about objects in the sky flying in ways that, for us, just technologically aren't possible. And we've discussed this before. We've got a craft that takes off at such speed that if there was a passenger inside or a pilot made of the same kind of flesh and blood as us, they wouldn't survive it.
No,
they'd just be crushed.
Unless it's their equivalent of an unmanned drone, I guess. And I think that different craft that are seen, so we have cigar-shaped craft, triangular craft, saucer-shaped craft, spheres. So why so many different UFOs? And I believe, like we do have, we have on Earth, we have different types of plane. We have cargo planes, crop sprayers, commercial jets, military jets, and each plane is made for a different purpose and a different function. And I think different UFOs, or UAPs as the trendy term is now, are for different things. Some might be probes, and some might be craft that are conveying occupants from wherever they've come from.
On that particular subject, then, I mean, all we can do on this particular part is speculate, but there are so many theories around at the moment about, you used the term earlier, non-human intelligence. You know, where do they come from? Are they extraterrestrials? Are they terrestrials living under the sea? Because there's a lot of, obviously, USO reports or submersible reports coming through now. Are they time travelers? Are they interdimensional? You know, you mentioned about the craft going through what you never used the term portal, but that's what it sounded like to me. What's your personal belief as to where these things come from?
My personal belief? So I went from being on the fence to quietly convinced to now believing beyond all reasonable doubt that we are absolutely 100% not alone in the universe. Where these craft come from, I can only but guess. There are two schools of theory for me, and I think both are true. I think you've got some, let's just say what it is, aliens. I think they're coming from the great distances, you know, from different parts of the Milky Way, or maybe even another galaxy, and they've conquered space light travel. Maybe they can create wormholes and go in them and come out. So I think there's those that are on our plane of existence, albeit in the same galaxy, just far away. Then I think there's the second type where they're on a different dimensional level. And I think a lot's to be said. I know I sound off the charts here, but this is from the witnesses I've spoken to and research I've done. I think that, for example, where I am now could be the bottom of a sea in another dimension, or in the middle of a cliff or a mountain or whatever. And I think that there's the species that can come great distances, and there's the others that are interdimensional that can then change the frequency and then come into ours because they've got that level of technology. I know that sounds out there, but maybe in 300, 400, 500 years' time, this podcast will be played back and someone will say, you know what? You know, they laughed at him at the time, but, you know, they laughed at Galileo and they laughed at all these people who said these great things, and they've all found to be true. So, yeah, that's what I believe.
I think the second one is pretty much part of mainstream science. It's accepted that what we call matter or solid objects, really we're all just energy vibrating at a certain frequency. We are like a radio station, and if you get interference from another channel, or you move somewhere, like if you're driving in a car and as you drive out of range of one station and come into range of another, they start interfering with each other. That our reality can be like that, and that's where you see that's an explanation for ghosts. That
it is. So sometimes when the weather's just right and the frequency's just right, I think from the paranormal world, their frequency might fluctuate just a bit down towards ours, and ours might fluctuate a little bit, and occasionally we just, for that briefest amount of time, see each other or into each other's worlds or go from one to another. And I think that is possible. And probably you get a lot of UFO and paranormal occurrences, I guess, mixed up because people, the possibilities are endless, aren't they?
They are.
Absolutely,
the current thinking in ufology.
But suffice to say, I'm sure that you agree, and everybody probably watching agrees, that there are things within and beyond this world that we don't quite understand. We like to think we're smart, that we do, but we don't. And every year that goes by, we understand a bit more and a bit more. And I've got high hopes, probably not in my lifetime, but, a couple of generations, we understand a lot more, But there's definitely things we don't understand. It's like a veil here with a world behind it, and we can't see it, we can't get through it. And we just get a bit closer every couple of years.
Well, yeah, I've been looking into this for decades now, and crop circles and all kinds of things like that. I never dreamed that within my lifetime UFOs would be discussed in Congress in America.
I couldn't believe it either.
And here we are.
Yeah, and before that, NASA. I mean, that's the thing. I'm trying to keep up on current affairs. Obviously, you've got the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Centre, that are investigating, these things now, which were, they came after, it was ATIP, which Luis Alonso led. So I try to keep up on current affairs. I've watched, the videos that have been released by the Pentagon because, the Trump administration have authorised that. I think there's loads and loads of stuff that is even better they've got that will never see the light of day on.
Absolutely.
But you know what? If it's an improvement, then it can only be a good thing. And even if they give us 10%, 10% is better than 10% of nothing, right?
Yeah. And the subject's getting legitimised. So on that particular subject then, coming back onto your book, Close Encounters of the Police Kind, what's your hope for the book? In what way do you think it might move the needle, as it were?
I'm hoping that people will look at it and say, well, you've got a serving police officer, inspector rank, who has written this, and he's got those accounts from this is law enforcement interviewing law enforcement about a phenomena that's been taboo and hidden behind the badge for decades. So we're breaking the silence on something with sworn constables, and it's a job, that people trust in the main. And I think my hope is that people will see that and say, well, do you know what? You've got UK police officers talking about it now openly in a book that anybody, anywhere, all over the world can get a hold of. These officers knew once the name's in that book, there's no going back. There's no going back from any ridicule or stigma they get. So I think it'll help by virtue of the nature of the profession that people think, well, we've got people in a respectable professional job here who are coming forward. So there's got to be something in it. It can only help more people talk about it. That's my hope. And just getting these accounts out there. That's all I want, is for the subject to be taken more seriously. That is it.
Okay. Neil, do you have anything else to ask Roy?
No, I think we've covered everything. I mean, I had some notes about things I wanted to ask, but I think everything's come up.
Yeah, you've been so helpful and really, really interesting to talk to and to share. So thank you for that.
I didn't even go into any of the paranormal stuff, and that is probably a podcast in itself of some absolute crazy accounts that people have told me that you think, did that, I can't believe I've just written that down, and but I'm working on getting that out as well. But the only thing I would ask from, I guess, yourselves and anybody listening is, I've increased the scope for witnesses now. So it's not just police, but I'm after anybody from the emergency services, firefighters, the ambulance service, Coast Guard, And the military, if you're in any of those jobs or roles, or know anyone who is, who's former or serving in any of those roles or jobs, and you've had a UFO and a paranormal experience, any experience of the unexplained of any kind, then please do contact me about it and email me. So the email address is royteague@blueyonder.co.uk. So ROYTEAGUE @blueyonder.co.uk. And all emails are guaranteed to be answered. I love speaking to new people, but if you've got something to say, whether you're in any of those professions or not, send me an email. I'd love to hear from you.
We'll put your email address in the description for people to easily find it. So,
Stu, you're the best.
You too. Along with all the other links.
Yeah, when you get your next book out, we'd love to talk to you about that as well. Paranormal stuff, absolutely. So
I definitely will come back.
I hope so too, Roy.
Close Encounters of the Police Kind by Roy Teague is out now from Mirror Books. Roy, where's the best place for people to find it so they can get their own copy?
Well, I would say Amazon, but Amazon sold out on the first day. So I expected to sell 200 or 300 on the first day. 2,500. First day, within 3 hours, were gone.
Fantastic.
But Amazon, Waterstones. Do you know Asda bought 1,500? I can't believe it. But every little
brilliant.
So Asda, Waterstones, Amazon, any of those.
And is it available in Kindle as well as paperback? It's
coming out in Kindle, I think in a couple of weeks, and it's audio in about a month.
Okay.
So it's going to be all three platforms.
I hate to correct you on this. It's actually available now on Kindle because we've both got Kindle copies.
There you go.
So yeah, and again, we'll stick links in the description.
Roy, thank you so much for joining us and for bringing forward a side of the UFO subject that doesn't always get heard. The professional witnesses who may have had very good reasons to stay quiet.
Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome. I'm going to Kindle now to order a book.
Great. I've got my copy.
Well, there we are. That was Roy Teague. And again, that book, Close Encounters of the Police Kind from Mirror Books. Available at all good bookstockists, but sold out at Amazon. That's really good that it sold out straight away.
Apart from Kindle, of course, which can't sell out. Let's hope it continues to sell out. Let's hope we've done a good job for Roy.
Absolutely. It's a really good. I'm going to confess I haven't got all the way through the book as yet, but really good anthology of stories from what you hope is more reliable witnesses than just your Joe blogs.
Yeah, I think a book like that is probably better in paper form than Kindle because it's just a catalogue of sightings. You can dip in and out of it. Kindle forces you to read it linear from start to finish.
Yes, that's it. And but it is in chronological order, so starting with the oldest case first to the more modern ones. So hopefully that kind of brings more interest. Like, what's happened? What happened this last month? Kind of thing. But really good guest, I thought.
Very good guest.
Nice
and
chat.
He's obviously compiled his book. He's treated it like a police inquiry. He's questioned people. He's corroborated what they claim to have seen with other witnesses and with available data.
Done his due diligence.
Well, I'm sure as a police officer, he's very used to talking to people and hearing stories that don't match up either with evidence or what other people have said, or even, we talked about lost time. Well, I can imagine sometimes someone's talking about, where they were a particular evening with not doing a burglary, and the times just don't match up. And that there's nothing supernatural about that. just they haven't got their story straight.
Are you saying that occasionally you might have a certain kind of person who would lie to the police, Neil? Is that what you're saying?
I have heard, I've only ever seen it in fictional portrayals on television and in the movies. I don't know if it's a real thing, but it's certainly outside my personal experience.
So for me, during that, it's great to be talking to another sort of believer, as it were. Not that talking to you isn't always great. But did it move the needle for you at all, Neil? Like, did it make you sit and think, actually, there's more to this?
It's certainly more evidence that there is stuff going on. There's still, I mean, I do accept that there is life in other parts on other planets, in our own galaxy or in other galaxies. Certainly, Professor Brian Cox has said, yeah, that's certainly true. But whether they could actually get here because of the vast distances involved, and for us, unimaginable distances, that's another matter. And I'm still very sceptical about what our government's involvement in this, and and secret programs and reverse engineered UFO technology. Yeah, I think I'll need a lot more convincing about that. But certainly there's stuff that happens, either UFO or other paranormal related, because of what we now know about the nature of our reality, the nature of our existence, that we didn't know decades ago.
Yeah.
Or that were very, very fringe science. That we can have explanations for ghosts and UFOs and fairies and hobgoblins. I think there is a human tendency. Well, I mean, what makes police officers more credible is that I expect when they're seeing something, they're thinking, whatever I write down about this, and I've got to write something down, I'll probably have this read back to me in court. Police officers, I mean, everyone should think that way, but it's to have your words read back to you in court by a lawyer. Yeah. Police officers are probably more aware of that than most, so they've got to be careful what they write down. So they say, well, yes, I've seen something, and I don't know what it is. It's having this effect. It's having that effect. It's blocked a road. It's turned the lights off, or the lights have gone off simultaneously. I'm assuming cause and effect, but I don't know. But we, as humans, we don't like the unknown. No. I mean, we don't know what happens to us after death. So that's why we have religion. We make up stories about where you go after you die. And there will always be unexplained phenomena, which in previous times, before, when people really didn't understand space, and where they thought stars were just fairy lights in the sky and had no concept of other planets and that sort of thing, that they would have attributed these things to fairies and hobgoblins and whatever else they believed. Yeah, maybe find some local widow who lives on her own on a shack just out of town and throw her in the pond.
Well, a lot of ufology is now leaning, and there's a lot of talk currently around the idea that all these what we perceive to be different elements of the supernatural, UFOs, cryptids, ghosts, that kind of thing, is actually all one and the same phenomenon at its heart anyway. That's becoming more and more talked about. So perhaps one day the truth will out and it'll be stranger than we even realise now.
My personal feeling is it's not going to go that way. My personal feeling is that there will be some kind of scientific breakthrough, an Einstein type new way of looking at science, in the way that the theory of relativity overthrew Newtonian theories of gravity as a force. That there will be some new sort of understanding of the universe which might be able to explain some of these phenomena that we at the moment they don't fit into any of our science, but they might at some point. I think that's more likely than the government suddenly, or the RAF suddenly opening up a hangar and saying, we've come clean, we got this flying saucer, and here's the pilot, Marvin from Mars.
We can absolutely agree on that, because there's too many bodies hidden, there's too much corruption behind it all. But if at the end of the day we get to the truth, the fundamental truths behind it all, that'd be something to look forward to.
I also find it very hard to believe that level of secrecy could be maintained over such a long period of time. We've got, in Roy's book, we've got police officers who are prepared to talk about things now that they've retired and they've got nothing to lose. Or they don't have to maintain. They're not going to have a senior police officer telling them to shut up. It's hard to believe that level of secrecy could be maintained, because an awful lot of people would have to be in on it at places like Area 51, Roswell, or various Air Force bases around the world where these things have been sighted. But just like Roy Teague was able to interview retired police officers who no longer have anything to lose. While you're serving police officer, you could have the senior brass coming down on you and saying, if you don't shut up about this, you're going to be back on traffic duty. They probably can't threaten you with your pension or anything like that. So they're prepared to speak out and say, I saw this thing, don't know what it was. I would have thought by the same token there will be people on these very secret bases who, have we had a few people who, they've worked on these secret programs and suddenly they're in their dying days and think, I'm going to spill the beans about this.
Not so much in their dying day, but there are certainly people who, I'd say there's a world of difference between observing an incident and being involved in it. There are people that have come forward, have claimed to have been involved with it. I mean, Bob Lazar, very famously, as an example there. But there are people who, in much more senior levels, like in the military, people like James Lukatsky, who have come forward and they have said, there is a phenomenon there. Obviously, in the American military, they are very, very careful to only talk about those things that they are cleared to talk about, because national security is an issue and things like that. But I would say, there's a big difference. If you are involved in something like that, for a start, you would have been cleared and checked out. Are you the sort of person who is going to just go blabbing about it? As they learnt with Bob Lazar, they need to do. But also, there are people, I'll say allegedly, but there are people that have allegedly been killed because they have been about to come forward with what they know.
We haven't got people who say, well, actually it was me, I killed him because he was about to blab about this, and that was, well, I can tell you now because I know nothing can happen to me.
If you're the person who's pulled that trigger, metaphorically speaking, then you know for a fact that they will kill to keep that truth hidden. So you're not going to come forward and say that, are you?
No, but in intelligence and security circles, one thing we place great importance on is, we call it COC, which is circle of knowledge. Mm-hmm. So the more people who know about something, the less secure it becomes, just by its nature. And if you're talking about something like this long term, where someone might be security cleared in their 20s, well, they're going to be a different person by the time they're in their 60s, 70s.
Absolutely.
And have a completely different view of the world, possibly.
And you are talking about, you're not talking about a massive amount of people either. With this. But anyway, that's going way off topic and way down the rabbit hole, as we love to do. Yeah. So, everybody watching and everybody listening, go out, get a copy of this book, whether it's by Kindle or in paperback, from Mirror Books, Close Encounters of the Police Kind, and let us know what you think about it in the comments below, as per usual, or you can email us aliensexplored@gmail.com. And so there we go. Until next time, keep watching the bookshelves for new stuff coming out, and of course, keep watching the skies. Take care for now.
Catch you later. Bye bye.